Those of us after some more prolonged dry weather, well, I've got some good news for you, because from this weekend, high pressure is set to dominate for a few days at least. At the moment, we've got pretty mild air with us, but also low pressure across the UK. That's resulted in spells of wet weather and showers, and there's more of that to come through the rest of this week. Low pressure arrives through Friday into Saturday, but then from the weekend, we start to see high pressure building up from the south and west, becoming more dominant across the UK by Sunday, and it will last into next week as well. More on that in a moment. As I said, for the time being, through the rest of this week, we've still got low pressure to come, further spells of wet weather. Now through Thursday, the wet weather will be dominant across more northwestern areas. There is a risk of showers further south, but I think it should be a much drier day compared to Wednesday. In any sunshine, feeling relatively warm, highs of around 16 degrees in the best of that sunshine, but for most of us, temperatures will be pretty close to average. As I said, more in the way of showers across more northwestern areas. Here they could be relatively heavy too. And then through Thursday evening, we start to see some more persistent rain move in. That's ahead of this area of low pressure that brings wet and windy weather to many areas through Friday. So quite a damp evening. We've got the warm front with us, so under that warm sector will be quite a cloudy and damp night Thursday night. So another mild start to the day to come on Friday. And then it's Friday where this area of low pressure pushes up to the north and west of the UK. It doesn't push across the country, so we should escape the strongest winds, but it's still going to be a pretty windy day, particularly across the north and west. And this cold front is where we'll see the heaviest rain, pretty similar to Wednesday's weather, actually, a spell of wet weather pushing across the country through the middle of the day. Now, either side of that band of rain, there will be some sunshine. It's not going to feel too bad in that sunshine at all either. Highs around the high teens for some of us, a little bit cooler where we're closer to that area of low pressure, because we'll have slightly fresher air behind this cold front, but also because the winds will be stronger here. Here's a look at the gusts through Friday. As I said, we escaped the strongest gusts across much of the country, but parts of Northern Ireland and the far west of Scotland could see winds and gusts up to 50, possibly 60 miles per hour. So it's one to keep an eye on if you're in these areas. It's going to be certainly an unsettled day. But then things become more settled through Saturday. So high pressure is starting to build in from the south and west. It's a slow process at first, but then it does last into the start of next week. So Saturday looks like a showery day for northern areas. Across the south, though, it's going to be a pretty dry day, plenty of sunshine as well, particularly across more eastern areas of England, and in that sunshine, temperatures once again climbing towards the high teens. Further north, temperatures much closer to 10 or 11 degrees, so a little bit disappointing. Still quite a brisk westerly wind. So still some unsettled weather to start the weekend across more northern areas. The sunshine starting to become more dominant across the south through Saturday. It's from Sunday, though, that high pressure starts to dominate from the south, pushing northwards to extend across the whole country by the end of Sunday. It's slightly cooler air, so it's not going to be particularly warm out of the sunshine, but it does look like it will last well into next week as well. It does bring with it a risk of some northerly winds for a time, so perhaps some showers across northeastern coasts, but for most of us, plenty of dry weather to come. How long is this high pressure going to stick with us? Well, it's likely to stay with us until at least the middle part of next week, and there is a good chance that it could last into next weekend as well. However, from around Thursday onwards, there's pretty much equal weighting between more settled and more unsettled weather. But until Wednesday, what does that mean for the weather across the UK? Well, there is a lot of dry weather to come. Easterly winds, however, not a particularly warm direction. So out of the sunshine, it's not going to be particularly warm. The best of the sunshine likely to be across western areas, parts of Wales, southwest England, western Scotland and Northern Ireland seeing the best of that sunshine. Across the east coast, we could start to see some sea fog and har across the parts of the east coast of Scotland as well, bringing particularly cold mornings. So without that sunshine, it's going to feel a little bit cool for the time of year, but in the sunshine, pretty warm to be honest. The strength of the sun is equal to late August at this time of year. But that does mean we could also have some colder nights, particularly across northern areas. We haven't quite escaped any risk of frost, but plenty of dry weather wherever you are to come next week. So by Wednesday, these are the most likely weather patterns across the UK, and you can see all of them have an easterly component to them. There are some slight differences between them. The highest probability is for that high pressure to be situated slightly further north, bringing in quite straight easterly winds. We've also got a likelihood of seeing that high pressure up to more eastern areas of the UK, bringing in either a southeasterly or, if it's to the west, a northeasterly. So slight shifts of how much of a southerly or a northerly wind could affect quite how warm or cold it is. But I think with either of these directions, with the sunshine, it's going to feel pretty pleasant. But in the cloud, I think you will be missing the sunshine. And we do continue to hold on to that risk of cloudier skies across eastern areas throughout the week. What happens beyond that? Of course, this is the 10-day trend. We go out further than just a week ahead. Well, that's where we start to lose confidence, because this area of high pressure starts to move, and the direction it starts to move, well, that really does impact the possible outcomes. Now, these are the most likely outcomes for Saturday, the 25th of April. Notice all of them about 10 to 15% chance, all pretty low and all pretty different as well. But these are the sorts of things we could expect by that point. Well, we could have that high pressure well up to the north and west of the UK, and that could allow more northerly winds to push in, which could mean it could turn quite unsettled, but also quite cold. There's also this option where we could see that high pressure push to the north and west of the UK, but allow more directly northerly winds, which could bring even colder air. Or we could hold on to those easterly winds through next week, and with high pressure pretty close to the UK too. So I think it's really all to play for, depending on how that high and low start to move around, depending on where that high pushes away to. And it's worth noting this because it's still pretty cold air not too far away from the UK. So if it does allow a more direct northerly wind, well, we could still get some quite cold weather. But if we stick with high pressure and more southerly winds perhaps, well, we could get warmer weather. So there is a lot of variety in the options for the temperature from the end of next week into next weekend. And you can see that with the meteograms here. This is the maximum temperature, and here is the minimum temperature. This one's for Edinburgh. I'll show you London in just a second. So you can see here for the weekend, from the weekend onwards, the maximum temperatures do take a bit of a downfall from the weekend. I think with any sunshine, though, it's going to feel a little bit warmer than these temperatures might suggest. Will be average or just above average. And then from Wednesday onwards, there's a huge spread in options to below average to quite high, quite far above average. It's worth noting as well, the risk of colder nights as well continues all the way through until next weekend. So those of us concerned with frost, I think we still need to keep an eye on things, particularly if you're out in the garden. And here's London's picture. It's relatively similar, but we don't develop quite as much of a spread into next week, the latter part of next week into next weekend. We haven't got as many of those colder options. That's because we'll be further away from that cold air up to the north of the UK, close to the Arctic. And similar picture for the minimums as well. That bottom line there of the minimums still reaching the low single figures. So I think any frost risk is pretty minimal for southern areas into next week. It's more northern areas where we need to keep an eye on it. So some good news for good weather, dry weather, some reliable dry weather, at least for 4 or 5 days from this weekend into next week. Hopefully you can make the most of that. How long it's going to last? Well, you'll have to stay up to date. We'll be keeping an eye on it and keeping you up to date. So don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.